Hello, Gemini, and welcome back. I'm really glad you're here today. As I sit with your energy and begin laying these cards on the table, I can't help but notice how quiet this reading feels at first. Not empty, not distant, just quiet in that strange way a room feels after someone has left. Yet somehow their presence still lingers in the air. The Five of Pentacles appears early in this reading, and the feeling surrounding it is difficult to ignore. It feels as though someone has been carrying the weight of separation much longer than they expected. For some of you, this may be physical distance. For others, it may simply be silence. But whatever form it has taken, it seems to have created far more reflection than either of you anticipated. I keep getting the sense that this person thought time would make things easier. Maybe they believed enough days, weeks, or even months would slowly soften whatever remained between you. Yet the energy here feels different. It feels like every step away somehow brought them back to another memory, another thought, another unanswered question. And Gemini, what stands out most is that this doesn't feel like someone who has truly moved on from the story. It's almost like they keep finding pieces of you hidden in ordinary moments, a song they weren't expecting. A familiar phrase, a random afternoon when their mind suddenly drifts somewhere they weren't planning to go. The High Priestess is sitting quietly beside this energy, and I find that interesting. Not because of what the card traditionally represents, but because of the atmosphere it creates here. There seems to be so much left unsaid. So many things existing beneath the surface. This person may not be speaking openly, they may not be reaching out. Yet their silence doesn't feel empty. Their silence feels occupied, filled with thoughts they haven't figured out how to express, filled with emotions they aren't completely comfortable revealing. And for some reason, Gemini, I keep feeling that they see you differently than they see most people. The Lovers appears, and the moment it arrives, the energy shifts. Their thoughts become more personal, more vulnerable, more human. Because underneath everything else, there seems to be admiration. The kind that makes someone pause before speaking. The kind that makes them second-guess themselves. Oh my God, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I reach out and it changes nothing? What if Gemini has already moved on? Those kinds of questions seem to circle through their mind more often than they would probably admit. It's strange because the admiration itself may actually be contributing to the distance. The more highly they think of you, the more aware they become of their own insecurities. The more they remember your strengths, your growth, your energy, the more they seem to compare themselves against it. And that comparison doesn't always leave them feeling confident. For some of you, this person may wonder whether they still have a place in your life at all. Whether they would even know how to begin a conversation if given the chance. Whether too much time has already passed. The Two of Swords appears almost like a crossroads. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just uncertain. One path moves toward communication. The other remains wrapped in silence. And what fascinates me is that neither option seems easy for them. Speaking requires courage. Remaining silent requires endurance. So they continue standing somewhere between those two worlds, holding conversations in their head that never quite make it into reality. Yeah, this feels less like someone who has forgotten and more like someone who is still trying to understand what to do with everything they feel. Because beneath the distance, beneath the hesitation, beneath the unanswered questions, there is still a connection to this story, a thread that hasn't fully disappeared. And as I continue looking at these cards, I can't help feeling that this inner conflict may be building towards something much larger than it first appears. Something that begins not with action, but with a realization they may no longer be able to ignore. There is a quieter layer emerging here, Gemini, one that feels less concerned with what happened between two people and more concerned with what happened inside someone's heart after everything settled down. The noise faded, the distractions faded, life continued moving forward the way it always does. Yet some questions seem to have remained behind, waiting patiently in the background. The Hermit appears, and the atmosphere immediately changes. This doesn't feel like someone seeking answers from other people anymore. It feels like someone sitting alone with their own thoughts. Someone replaying old choices during long drives. Someone staring out a window after a busy day and suddenly finding themselves revisiting moments they thought they had already put behind them. You know, Gemini, sometimes people avoid certain feelings because they believe distance will make them disappear. Sometimes they bury themselves in work. Sometimes they fill every empty space with noise. Sometimes they convince themselves they are completely fine. But eventually, life becomes quiet enough for the truth to catch up. And that's exactly what this energy reminds me of. A person slowly reaching a point where they can no longer outrun their own reflection. Judgment arrives beside the Hermit, and it almost feels like an awakening unfolding in slow motion. Not dramatic, not sudden, more like a series of realizations appearing one after another. The kind that happen unexpectedly. A random memory surfaces. A conversation suddenly makes sense. A decision that once felt justified begins to look different from a new perspective. And what fascinates me is that nobody seems to be forcing this process. It's happening naturally. Life itself is becoming the teacher. Experiences are becoming mirrors. And little by little, this person may be recognizing how certain choices shape the road they eventually found themselves walking. For some of you, there could be moments where they look back and realize they were reacting from fear rather than understanding. Maybe they were protecting themselves. Maybe they were avoiding vulnerability. Maybe they simply weren't ready to face something that felt bigger than they knew how to handle. Whatever the reason was, it feels like they're seeing those moments differently now. The moon appears here, creating an almost dreamlike feeling around everything. Old emotions don't seem as hidden as they once were. The walls feel thinner, the defenses feel weaker, and beneath all of that, there appears to be a growing awareness of feelings that never completely disappeared. Oh my God, it's almost like opening a forgotten box in the attic and finding something inside that still carries emotional weight years later. You thought it belonged to the past. You thought you were finished with it. Yet the moment you see it again, something stirs. That's what this energy feels like. The heart remembering what the mind tried to organize into a neat conclusion. And Gemini, I don't think this process is entirely comfortable for them, because the deeper they go, the harder it becomes to avoid certain truths. Some truths ask difficult questions. Why did I walk away from something important? Why did I stay silent when I wanted to speak? Why did I choose certainty over connection? Why did I convince myself I wasn't affected? The Ten of Swords enters the reading almost like the emotional weight of those questions. Not because everything is falling apart. Actually, quite the opposite. It feels like someone finally acknowledging where certain painful chapters truly left their mark. There is maturity in that. There is growth in that. Acknowledging pain often requires more courage than pretending it never existed. Yeah, this feels like a period of emotional honesty. A season where illusions slowly lose their power. A season where someone begins understanding not only what happened, but why it happened. And perhaps even more importantly, who they became because of it. The energy doesn't feel stuck here. It feels reflective, like someone standing between an old version of themselves and a version that is still emerging. The distance between those two versions may be shrinking every day. Because what I'm seeing isn't someone running anymore. I'm seeing someone listening. Listening to memories. Listening to lessons. Listening to emotions they once pushed aside. And as these pieces continue finding their place, another feeling starts appearing beneath the surface. A feeling that has less to do with regret, and much more to do with wanting to finally say what has remained unsaid for far too long. A gentle sense of anticipation begins to appear here, Gemini. Not the kind that rushes forward demanding immediate answers, but the kind that quietly builds in someone's chest when they realize there are things they can no longer keep locked away. The Page of Cups enters this reading with a very different feeling from everything that came before. There is softness here, vulnerability, a willingness to explore emotions that may have once felt too complicated or too risky to express. What catches my attention is how sincere this energy feels. It doesn't feel rehearsed. It doesn't feel calculated. It feels like someone standing at the edge of a conversation they have imagined 100 times but never quite found the courage to begin. You know those moments when a message is typed out and erased, typed again, read over several times, then left unsent. That's the atmosphere surrounding this card. Because what remains unspoken often develops a life of its own. Questions grow larger, scenarios multiply. The imagination fills in gaps that reality never had the chance to answer. And somewhere inside all of that, this person may be realizing that silence has become heavier than honesty. The Knight of Cups appears, and suddenly the energy begins to move. Not dramatically, not recklessly, just enough to suggest that something within them is becoming harder to ignore. A desire to explain, a desire to share, a desire to bridge a distance that words themselves may have helped create. I keep sensing someone revisiting conversations they wish had gone differently. Not necessarily because they want to rewrite the past, more because they finally understand what they wish they had said at the time. Maybe there were emotions hidden beneath pride. Maybe there were fears disguised as indifference. Maybe there were truths they didn't fully understand until much later. Life has a strange way of teaching us the meaning of certain moments only after they've already passed. And this feels connected to that kind of realization. Gemini, there is something very human about this energy. It's not perfect. It's not polished. It's not someone showing up with every answer. It's someone recognizing that connection requires honesty, even when honesty feels uncomfortable. The King of Cups sits nearby, creating a deeper emotional current beneath everything else. What interests me about this card in this position is the feeling of emotional maturity slowly emerging. Not because every wound has healed, not because every uncertainty has disappeared, but because there seems to be a growing willingness to sit with feelings instead of running from them. Oh my God, that's actually a big shift. Sometimes growth doesn't look like dramatic transformation. Sometimes growth looks like someone finally allowing themselves to admit what matters to them, to admit who matters to them, to admit that certain connections never truly left their heart. There may even be moments where this person surprises themselves. Moments where they suddenly recognize how often they think about you, how often they wonder what you would say, how often they imagine conversations that haven't happened yet. And while they may not reveal all of this immediately, the emotional pressure behind these thoughts feels stronger than before. The Three of Cups brings a warmer atmosphere into the reading, something lighter, more hopeful, almost like the possibility of two people sitting across from each other without all the walls that once existed between them. I keep seeing an image of laughter returning after a serious conversation. That moment when tension begins to dissolve, when understanding starts replacing assumptions, when two people stop trying to protect themselves long enough to genuinely hear each other. Yeah, there is something beautiful about that image. Because genuine communication is rarely about having the perfect words. It's about creating enough safety for the truth to finally emerge. For some of you, this energy may not even be about one single conversation. It could be about a gradual opening, a series of exchanges, small moments that slowly rebuild trust, small moments that remind two people why they connected in the first place. What feels important here is that the emotional distance no longer seems as comfortable as it once did. There is a growing pull toward authenticity, toward expression, toward allowing feelings to exist in the open rather than in the shadows. And as this desire for honest communication continues to grow, another layer begins appearing beneath the surface. A layer that isn't focused only on what happened or what needs to be said. It seems increasingly focused on what could become possible if both people were willing to look beyond the past and imagine something different ahead. A different kind of energy begins to emerge here, Gemini. It feels less emotional and more intentional, not cold, not distant, just thoughtful in a way that suggests someone is beginning to look beyond immediate feelings and toward the shape of something larger. The Two of Wands appears, and the image that comes to mind is someone standing at the edge of a familiar landscape, realizing there may be more possibilities ahead than they once believed. For a long time, they may have been focused on surviving the present, managing responsibilities, navigating uncertainty, trying to make sense of their own internal world. Yet this card feels like a shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "What do I do today?" the question seems to be becoming, "Where do I want to be a year from now?" And somehow, Gemini, your presence seems woven into those thoughts. Not necessarily in an obvious way, not as an obsession, more like a recurring possibility that keeps appearing whenever they imagine a future that feels meaningful. It's interesting because future planning often reveals what truly matters to someone. When people imagine their life months or years ahead, certain faces naturally appear in those visions. Certain connections continue showing up no matter how many times they try to imagine different scenarios. That's the feeling surrounding this energy. A realization that some people become part of the picture no matter how many versions of the future you create. The Emperor enters the reading with a steady and grounded presence. There is something mature about this card showing up here. Something that feels connected to responsibility, to accountability, to becoming the kind of person capable of building rather than simply dreaming. And what I find fascinating is that this doesn't feel like someone waiting for life to magically solve their problems. It feels like someone beginning to understand that meaningful outcomes require participation. That if something matters enough, eventually choices must align with intentions. Yeah, this energy feels very different from hesitation. Not because every doubt has disappeared, but because the focus is shifting away from fear and toward preparation. I keep sensing someone becoming more aware of the practical side of connection, the everyday side, the part that exists beyond chemistry, beyond attraction, beyond emotion. Questions like, could we build something real? Could we support one another? Could we create stability together? Could we grow in the same direction? Those questions seem increasingly important, and honestly, Gemini, those are not the kinds of questions people ask when they are only thinking about the present moment. The Knight of Pentacles appears, bringing a slower rhythm into the reading. There is no urgency here, no dramatic rush toward immediate action. In fact, this card almost feels patient, deliberate, measured, like someone carefully placing stones to build a path instead of trying to leap across a river all at once. Oh my God, that image feels so accurate. Because sometimes people assume progress must be fast in order to be meaningful. Yet some of the strongest foundations are built quietly, one choice at a time, one lesson at a time, one act of consistency at a time. And there seems to be an understanding developing within this person that whatever they envision for the future deserves that kind of care. The Three of Pentacles deepens this feeling even further. What stands out most here is cooperation. Not perfection, not fantasy. Cooperation, the willingness to work alongside someone rather than expecting everything to happen effortlessly. I keep seeing two people sitting at a table, talking, planning, sharing ideas, listening, adjusting, creating something together that neither could fully create alone. There is something incredibly mature about that image, because genuine connection often grows strongest when two people stop trying to win and start trying to build. And this energy feels very focused on building trust, building understanding, building a future that reflects who both people have become rather than who they once were. For some of you, this person may still be figuring out timing, still arranging certain pieces of their life, still deciding how best to move forward. But the emotional atmosphere here feels increasingly connected to preparation rather than uncertainty. The focus is gradually shifting toward possibility, toward potential, toward imagining what life could look like if effort and intention were allowed to work together. And as these plans continue forming beneath the surface, another feeling begins quietly taking shape. A sense that the road ahead may be leading toward the closing of one chapter and the opening of something entirely new. A sense of completion begins moving through this reading, Gemini, but not in the way people often imagine. This doesn't feel like an ending where doors close and everything fades into the past. It feels more like standing on a hill after a long journey, and suddenly seeing how all the roads, detours, delays, and unexpected turns were quietly leading toward a new horizon. The world appears, and the energy surrounding it feels surprisingly peaceful. There is less resistance here, less struggle, less urgency to control every outcome. Instead, I see someone beginning to understand that certain chapters had to unfold exactly as they did in order to teach what they needed to teach. You know, life has a strange way of revealing meaning long after events have happened. A painful goodbye may eventually reveal a hidden lesson. A period of silence may uncover strength that was never visible before. A difficult separation may create growth neither person could have found while standing in the same place. And what I'm sensing here is an awareness slowly emerging around that truth. The old story doesn't seem to carry the same weight anymore. Not because it has been forgotten, because it has been understood differently. The Six of Swords appears beside this energy, and immediately I feel movement, gentle movement, steady movement, not running, not escaping, simply moving toward calmer emotional waters. There is something beautiful about that, because healing often isn't dramatic. Most of the time it happens quietly, one realization at a time, one decision at a time, one peaceful morning at a time. And for some reason, Gemini, I keep seeing two people who have both changed more than they realize. People often think transformation should look obvious, yet the deepest changes frequently happen beneath the surface, in private moments, during sleepless nights, during difficult choices, during long periods when nobody else sees the work being done. The energy here feels like the result of that unseen work, the result of lessons being integrated rather than simply learned. And because of that, the future begins to look different. The Four of Wands enters the reading, bringing warmth with it. Not fantasy, not illusion. Warmth. The kind of warmth that comes from feeling safe, feeling welcomed, feeling understood. I keep seeing an image of a doorway. Not a grand doorway, just an ordinary one. Yet there is something meaningful about it, because a doorway represents entry into a new space, a new chapter, a new experience. And this card feels connected to that symbolism. A crossing point, a moment where the energy shifts from surviving the past toward creating something meaningful in the present. What stands out most is that this energy doesn't seem focused on proving anything. It feels focused on sharing something, building something, experiencing something together. The emotional atmosphere feels much lighter than it once did, almost as if the burden of unfinished lessons is beginning to lift. And when that happens, possibilities naturally expand. The Ten of Cups appears, and the entire reading softens. Oh my God, there is such a gentle feeling surrounding this card. Not because it promises perfection, life rarely works that way, but because it reflects a vision, a hope, an emotional destination that continues pulling someone's attention forward. I keep sensing a shift away from asking, what went wrong, and toward asking, what could still be created? That's a very different question. One lives in regret. The other lives in possibility. One remains attached to what cannot be changed. The other begins exploring what may still be built. And honestly, Gemini, this feels like the most important transformation in the entire reading. Because the focus is no longer resting on old wounds. The focus is beginning to move toward emotional fulfillment, shared experiences, and meaningful connection. There is still room for uncertainty. There is still room for free will. There is still room for life to unfold in unexpected ways. Yet the emotional current here feels increasingly aligned with growth rather than loss, with creation rather than reflection, with forward movement rather than looking back. And as I sit with these final cards, I can't help feeling that something meaningful has been taking shape beneath the surface for much longer than anyone realized. A new chapter may not arrive all at once. Sometimes it begins with a single conversation, a single choice, a single moment of honesty. Whatever form it eventually takes, the energy feels less concerned with what has ended and more interested in discovering what becomes possible when two people carry the wisdom of the past into a future that has not yet been written. Maybe this chapter isn't really about what's ending. Maybe it's about what's finally becoming clear. And whether this connection moves quickly, slowly, or in a completely unexpected direction, I hope this reading reminded you of something important today. Your story is still being written. Keep moving forward, keep choosing yourself, and keep making space for the things that genuinely bring peace to your heart. Thank you for allowing me to share this reading with you today. Gemini, you are deeply appreciated, and I truly hope something here brought you the clarity you needed right now. I'll see you in the next reading. Until then, take good care of yourself. Okay, bye.